Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to yet another edition of the Pure Digital Passion Podcast with me, Moses Kemibaro. My guest today is Dele Akinsade, the Senior Director of Cloud Expansion at Microsoft. He's specifically handling Microsoft Azure Cloud Expansion in the Middle East and Africa. And he's not only a technology evangelist, but also a philanthropist driving STEM education through his Dele Akinsade Foundation. Today, we'll delve into his journey, his pioneering work in cloud infrastructure across Africa, and his perspectives on AI's transformative potential for the continent. So get ready to dive deep into this. Amazingly, I met Dele just last week when we were at the CIO 100 Symposium in Naivasha. Him and I had not met probably in, I think, 12 years since the days when I used to work for Inmobi. And I believe at that time, Dele was actually working with Microsoft in Lagos. So thank you so much for joining us, Dele.
Thank you, Moses. It's a pleasure joining you, seeing you again, and thanks for the opportunity to engage with your audience.
Thank you so much. So let's get started. I want you to share a little bit about your background growing up, what inspired your, sort of your passion and potential for technology.
Yeah. So, wow. I don't want to age myself too much here, but I've always had a passion in the sciences. Let me put it that way. From when I started in college, I actually wanted to be a medical doctor. That was the goal at the time. And then that ambition went to being a pharmacist. And then from a pharmacist to becoming a career in computer science. So I changed my majors and transferred colleges, mainly because of that. And then in the 90s, I believe, was when I decided that, okay, I think tech was going to be where I wanted to start my career in. So that's how I got involved. Now, my career at the time was more around programming, etc. And this was me when I was based in the US at the time, pre-Microsoft, obviously. I started working in the cloud space probably in the late 90s. This was before Azure, before online email messaging services, etc. The company that I worked for at the time, called US Internetworking, we were the first people to do hosted email services, and the first company actually to do hosted Microsoft email. I was one of the first engineers that was hired, and that was my introduction into cloud at the time. So we did a lot of projects around migrating companies from their on-prem email system, legacy email systems, to a more directory-based email system, leveraging Microsoft Exchange and Active Directory at the time.
Fantastic. So you were actually there at the beginning of that transition across the industry.
Yeah, I was there not knowing where it was going, but that seemed to be the thing that customers needed, because back in those days, this was when email viruses was very, very prevalent. A lot of organizations were struggling on how to deal with it. So one of the value propositions that we had as a company was we will manage your emails for you, make sure that it's secure, make sure it's backed up, eliminate disasters, etc. And we were doing this, primarily from a data center, a modern data center at the time. This was in Annapolis, Maryland. And most of our customers were actually US based, but we actually had a couple of global customers as well. So it was quite interesting at the time. And Microsoft, so that's how I got into Microsoft. Microsoft were partnered with us at the time. We had a lot of Microsoft people in our offices. And that is how I got close to the Microsoft people, and then decided to join Microsoft as a consultant, working on messaging and directory services.
What was that transition like, moving from probably what was a smaller, more intimate business to Microsoft? Was that a big change for you?
Oh yeah, it was a very big change because our customer base at the time, because the company I was working for, US Internet, was actually a startup. I think we're barely 2 or 3 years old. It was one of those .com startups, to where I'm now working, where my customers are Fortune 500 customers, global customers. So it was a very, very different ball game at that time. And just the fact that you now had access to more, more capacity and capabilities, being able to reach out to the people that actually wrote the code was actually quite interesting and exciting, and actually got me more interested into the back-end services and how things worked in the back end when it came to the things that we're doing.
So maybe just to pick up on that, so how did this shape your expertise in the cloud and infrastructure space? I'm just imagining that that was a key moment in terms of sort of seeing the universe of stuff, which obviously is what you do more of today. But how did that transition happen for you at that point in time?
So I would say there was a gap, there was a break at that time because the cloud, forgive me, I forgot what Office 365 used to be called before the new name now used to be called something else. I think it was Messaging Online or Exchange Online.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so it was it was a niche product. Not many customers were familiar or willing or ready to take that journey. Obviously, Azure wasn't available at that time. Azure is maybe a little over 10 years old as we know it today. So I was doing a lot of on-prem work at the time. And soon afterwards, I changed roles within the company to move into more of sales, technical sales at the time. So a lot of the things that we're doing, and this is when I moved to Africa, a lot of things that we're doing at the time were all on-prem for the most part. But as the cloud started to become more adopted in the developed world and started to spread across the globe, moving into Africa, then my experiences from being there early started to become more relevant as to how I will have discussions with customers, how I will even have discussions with my colleagues in the office as to the benefits of the cloud and where I think the cloud can be. I would say the past 10 to 15 years is really taking off. I've been with Microsoft now for 23 years, so it's been a long period of time. But the cloud wasn't always there. But I was in the cloud before joining Microsoft.
Absolutely. So I think a big inspiration for this particular conversation was actually your presentation last week at CL 100. And that's when you sort of reconnected and got to sort of catch up again. But you talked about AI-ready infrastructure, and I think AIs are now on everyone's lips. I remember we talked a little bit about, the deployment of data centers across Africa, which ultimately sort of make possible AI capabilities on the continent. But going back to AI-ready infrastructure, what does this concept mean? And why is it important for Africa?
Yeah, so when you look at it from an AI perspective, there are different lenses that one can look at it and different applications of it. And when it comes to infrastructure, the infrastructure doesn't necessarily mean, what's in the back end. It can even be from the infrastructure that you hold in your hands. So, but for me, I come at it more from the back end infrastructure as to what's needed, etc. Now, just like with anything that you want to do in life, there has to be some foundations, especially if you're building something. And we need to, over the past 10 to 15 years, Africa has done a lot when it comes to infrastructure that can support what will go on top of it. So from subsea cables to last mile to data centers across the continent, to skills that people need to be able to do these things, to what startups and the ecosystem are able to leverage with the information that they have and provide AI capabilities into that. So there are many opportunities in that particular space. But when it comes to the to having an AI infrastructure ready in Africa, we need to look at it, what is the objective here? What are we trying to accomplish? There are certain things that are available today that everybody on the continent has access to without necessarily having that infrastructure on the ground right now. The opportunity is that as more infrastructure becomes more available closer to people, and as regulations in these countries permit, then it really opens up Africa, especially for small and medium businesses, for the academia space, in research, and also for governments to provide public services. That's where the value will now come up. But a lot of that can be done today with what we have. But for us to really get the true benefits of it, there's still a lot more to go. And we're getting there slowly.
Which actually is a perfect segue to my next question. How is Microsoft and people like yourself working at Microsoft addressing the barriers like cost, connectivity, regulatory considerations for cloud adoption within the region?
Yeah. So let's start with cost. With cost, that we see that will continue to go down. Africa is a very price sensitive continent, just like with most developing markets compared to the developed world. So we'll always have that struggle. And the cloud is the same everywhere, right? And it provides the same value everywhere. But what drives up costs are essentially a lot of this of it is infrastructure. And being able for governments to provide incentives for companies, for businesses, for enterprises to be able to lay down the infrastructure pieces is essential. So Africa today has many, many subsea cables that are terminating at different ports around the continent. Broadband capabilities is already at our doorstep. Now, for it to go into the inland, there's a lot of work that actually has already gone on, where you see last mile development. And there's also capabilities that come directly from space that are not necessarily through cabling that needs to be done. So those are putting pressure on prices. So access pricing is going down. Where Africa has an advantage is around the talent pool and that's available to be able to work on this infrastructure. We have thousands, if not millions, of young people who are talented, who also are developing, already have the skill sets, and that will also offset some of the costs that we see here when it comes to bringing prices down. But I think overall, the pricing are going to continue to drop. So it's not only Microsoft that's coming into the region, other cloud providers are coming in, multinationals are coming in, other local based cloud providers are also there. That number is also increasing. So as more and more of us come into the market, it's going to put pressure on pricing, and pricing is going to continue to go down, where it will become profitable still for these companies and affordable for consumers.
Excellent. So when it comes to cloud expansion in Africa, thinking about Microsoft Azure and what you're doing in Africa, what are some of the biggest achievements that you've had in terms of rolling out across the continent?
So one of the biggest things that we see is just the adoption of cloud technology generally. So whether the cloud infrastructure is physically on the continent or not, that's not necessarily the big question. The fact is that customers are using the cloud. So whether they're using Azure, whether they're using Office 365, whether they're using Dynamics, or whether they're using Copilot resources, they're using cloud resources that are hosted probably on some Azure data center somewhere. The fact that we now have cloud presence on the continent in South Africa, that's a very good plus. That shows confidence into Africa, where Microsoft we were the first major vendor to come in. Now we have AWS on the continent. We have GCP from Google on the continent. And there are others that are also coming in as well. But that's also raised up the game of the local cloud providers. So local cloud providers in other countries are also stepping up their games. And they're also providing services that are relevant locally to where they are. So that's one of the benefits that we see, is that we've increased the acceleration. We've accelerated the adoption of cloud services. A lot of these cloud services rely on infrastructure as a service solutions that Azure provides. And we expect that will continue to be prevalent across the continent. So other players will go in. We will continue to look at regions to move into across the world, including Africa. So I see more opportunities here.
So how do you use sort of a more unique approach to how you roll out your cloud propositions on the African continent, let's say relative to other cloud providers? And of course, Kenya has this new initiative that you're going to be rolling out here, I think in a few years, a very significant investment, I think over $1 billion when it comes to building a data center for this region.
Yeah, so, I mean, we follow we follow where the opportunities are, right? Where there's a need from a standpoint that also makes sense, where there's profitability, because all these cloud providers are also in it to make profit. But we're in it to also provide services and capabilities and enable countries to grow. Many companies within these countries are on a digital transformation journey. They're looking become more flexible, more agile to serve their customers. There's a lot of competition within their spaces. They're looking to become more innovative. The best way and the quickest way to do that in a very cost-effective manner is leveraging cloud resources. So more and more customers are transforming their resources and their finances into cloud-enabled technologies. And us as a cloud provider, we're looking at opportunities where it makes sense for us to expand based on the business realities on the ground. So when Azure started, we just had a handful of Azure regions. Today, we have over 60 across the world. So that journey is continuing. We're going to continue to expand. We're going to look at opportunities where it makes sense and work with our local partners in those markets and expanding into them where it makes sense.
Fantastic. So obviously the big thing right now is AI, and everyone's talking about AI. And I think you're in a very good vantage point to maybe give us a perspective around how AI is impacting Africa's economy and what potential you see for its adoption across various sectors.
Yeah. So, I mean, AI is being discussed everywhere. Everybody has an idea as to how it should be or how it will work. And we all have those ideas. And like I said, that technology, that access to it is readily available today. But when you look at specifically as to the opportunities where this could actually help, and hopefully can hasten the adoption, as I mentioned during my talk last week, one of the key things that actually needs to be addressed is around the regulations around this, because AI specifically has a lot of benefits, but there's also some risk that countries and companies and individuals need to be very mindful of. And this is where government and the regulator can actually come into play to set specific guidelines that govern the use and adoption of this particular technology. But we can see it opportunities where it can have substantial impact in Africa in the healthcare sector, for instance, to enable personalized treatment plans for patients, to help with diagnosing challenges that people may have. Telemedicine is another area that we can take a look at. Another vertical that one can look at is agriculture. Agriculture is the biggest contributor to GDP across the continent. That's one area where AI technology can help our farmers out there. Education is another area that I'm passionate about, where we see AI benefits that can help our continent. We have a very young population that can really, really benefit from this. And then you already see some of this today in more mature sectors on the continent, like fintech, in financial services, transportation and logistics. You all also see that as well. But for me, where I think the benefits will come to most people across the continent is leveraging AI in government and public services. And being able to get access to your documents that you normally will need to make a trip for. Being able to do government services like pay your bill or get a visa or renew your passport or get a driver's license or a birth certificate or a marriage certificate. And then government uses that information to be able to make decisions, because its policies can now be dictated by data. So those are key benefits that I see AI providing if implemented properly and if the right regulation and guidelines are there available. So there's plenty of opportunities, but we need to make sure that the core infrastructure is there. We need to make sure that the governance and the regulations are there. And then these applications and in various sectors can then take advantage of the opportunities that AI provides. And we need to start that step by step. So in the financial services space, there's a lot of work already going on in that particular space that are AI driven already.
Fantastic. I think there's a perfect segue again, just in terms of your perspective about how businesses can leverage AI responsibly and inclusively across the continent. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, companies are going to have to do that because, I mean, it is not only to their benefit, but as you said, it's going to be beneficial to the consumer as well. The more the consumers are happy and leveraging their services, the more information they'll be able to accumulate, the more value they'll provide to consumers. So the technology can be used for a lot of good. And we're barely scratching the surface as to the benefits that this could provide to enterprises. Like I said, in the financial services space, in the telecom space, in media and entertainment, there's a lot of value that can be provided there. And also from an employment standpoint, there's a lot of new opportunities for young people, for businesses, small, big, or large, that can benefit from a lot of this, that will also transfer down to their employees, to their consumers, etc.
So I'd like to switch gears and talk a little bit about your philanthropic work, specifically the foundation that you set up to drive STEM education. And I want to just understand what inspired this initiative and what are some of the key focus areas you're looking at in that space.
I mean, so this has been a long journey for me, and is based primarily on my experiences working for Microsoft in Africa. I was fortunate to have a role that gave me exposure and visibility to a segment of the society that I normally would not have been able to engage in. I was responsible for our ecosystem business as an evangelist at the time. And part of my role was to engage with students, engage with startups, engage with developers, IT pros, and governments, and also enterprises as well, across the board, just evangelizing technology. So I did that for a number of years. And when I went back to the States to work in our engineering team as part of the team that I'm part of right now with cloud expansion, there was a side project that I was on, which was primarily to where we made a proposal to the company to bring an engineering center to Africa, which is the African Development Center, that we opened in Lagos and Nairobi. And during that whole journey, when we were hiring people, and also engaging with people, you just realize that most of the audience that you're talking to are mostly guys, and you find very few women. Now, when I compare that to when I was working out of the Nigerian office, at one point, most of our leadership team, if not 50% of the leadership team, were actually women. So in a sales and marketing organization, you will see gender balance a little bit on par. But when you now move into the technical space, it's very lopsided. And one of the feedback that we got when we were talking to the students, especially the girls in these universities, were like, it's more of a cultural thing, and girls are not really encouraged to go into technical to do STEM, or if they do STEM, they're usually driven towards a particular segment of it. So maybe like nursing or being a midwife or anything like that. So I decided that, okay, we need to be able to have an environment where the talent pool looks like what, the population looks like generally. So I started this foundation where we identify students that are in high school. We prioritize girls, so it's open to everybody, but we prioritize girls to make sure that we meet our objectives. We provide mentorship, we pay for their tuition, their school uniform, bags, shoes, etc., while they're in senior high school. And we also, as part of the mentorship, if they get into university, we encourage them to go into universities. And if they get admission to university, any STEM courses any STEM major that they take, we will sponsor them 4 years in college as well. So we started this 4 years ago in 2020 with about 30 students. Right now, we're going to do our next cohort, induct them next week. So I'm going to be at that event next week. where we're inducting about 100 more students to bring our total to, I believe, close to 300 or so. And the plan is to basically onboard 100 every year, basically from senior secondary school on. So basically last 3 years of high school, every year we bring in 100. And then as they graduate into college, we'll continue to sponsor them as well. So we already have a few that are in university who are doing, and girls in particular, who are doing science majors, which is very, very encouraging. And we also have a local partnership with a University of Medical Sciences, that also has a lot of STEM majors. They provide some of the students to be volunteers as mentors for some of the kids that we work with as well. So it's been very rewarding. We're starting very slow, but we're hoping to expand it to other communities as well across the continent.
What's been the impact so far? I'm just thinking in terms of 4 years on, you've probably got some of the girls who graduated or maybe on the verge of graduating. What's been that impact? Any anecdotes or stories around some of the things that really have, you really felt were really impactful to you?
So every year we have so there's a local IT competition that we sponsor. So every year I go for the final presentations where we select the winners. And the number of girls that I see participating actively in the competition has grown dramatically from when it started probably 3 years ago. We're doing the next one, like I said, next week. And looking at the various projects, the thought process that have gone into it has been very, very encouraging. And these are kids that are probably 13 to 17 years old, within that age group, who are they're not in a developed market at all. They're actually working on projects that are relevant to them locally. Especially when during the COVID period, because that's when we started this, there was a lot of solutions that were based on basically medical solutions. And then some you will see that are based on agriculture solutions, because is an aggregate society there. And then lastly, over the last year or so, as we've started to get our first kids into university, I would say the population of the people that we're sponsoring are about 50-50, male, female. But the ones that have actually taken on STEM courses have actually been mostly females. And that has been very encouraging, and they're very excited about it because we've been able to showcase role models for them, because them not seeing that before was probably a hindrance. So one of the things that we're working on right now is to have other female technical people who look like them, who probably have similar backgrounds as them, to do more of the encouraging for them. And we've been getting lots of feedback as well from the principals of these schools as to the enthusiasm from the kids, knowing that this opportunity is available to them. And now they're thinking very broadly as to, what they can do. Now, we're only addressing a certain part of the whole situation here. We have partnerships with others, from summer camps that we want to get the kids involved in so they can continue that encouragement in tech, to, as they progress in university, for them to get internship opportunities as well with other companies that are local. And we're also looking to partner with other multinationals as well to donate equipment and resources for them, and also to even come and do some type of learnings with them and mentorships down the line.
Fantastic. That's amazing. And what role do you see STEM education playing in preparing our youth in Africa for obviously a technology-driven world where everything is digital first?
Yeah, so everything is digital first. So a lot of them have digital education to some extent, more than, say, when we were growing up. So they have that. But I think here is around the mindset that it provides for them, and also the fact from an employment situation. These guys can basically be self-employed because they have a technical background. When I was running ecosystem, and we used to do this competition called Imagine Cup across, globally. So we did this across Africa. you'll be surprised as to the number of students without any formal education on tech who made it far in the competition, where they basically self-taught themselves watching YouTube, right? On
Wow.
how to, you'll be surprised by that, because in the schools, they don't really have those formal STEM educations, and the lecturers or the teachers are not trained to be able to deliver those. So what we're doing here is just kind of formalize it a bit. So we're looking down the line to see what we can do to skill up the teachers, to encourage them in that respect. It may be providing them with laptops or other tools like that. But I think the main thing is for them to have that knowledge, so that when kids come in, the kids are not at a higher level than the teacher, so to speak, because the kids naturally are more digitally enabled than the teachers. So that's kind of the things that I see will start to change the landscape and make them be more ready, and also provide for them the ability to be self-employed. They can set up their own companies, they can do work remotely, and other things like that.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that this is really a foundation that prepares them to now move into these technology focused careers. The right
Yeah,
foundation. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
That foundation is key. I mean, I've been blessed that, for me growing up, and also, with my kids, they have that foundation in their schools. They have that foundation available to them on a daily basis, and I can see the impact that it has on them. If we have the ability to provide that for others, we should.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the future, because you're in a very unique position. You're at Microsoft, which is one of the epicenters of the global generative AI revolution, both through Azure and the products that you're rolling out in the marketplace. And I'm thinking around really the emerging technologies going beyond AI and cloud. What do you see shaping Africa's digital transformation in the next 5 to 10 years?
I mean, what I see shaping it is around the fact that, and you can see this from a policy standpoint a little bit, where borders, so to speak, are opening up. Trade across countries across the continent are opening up. The fact that we are moving all over the place, either within the continent or outside of the continent. And businesses now need to think differently, because now they have customers that are all over the continent, that travel all over the continent. And some of these businesses also need to enter different markets in different countries. So technology is going to be key to enable them to do that. And this is where government relationships play a key role. So the regional bodies, the continental bodies play a key role in this to ensure that technology is, that these companies are not restricted, because the technology is there to enable them to expand and reach out to serve their customers more. This will hasten and accelerate adoption and usage of cloud technologies, and make people to be more productive in whatever businesses that they choose to do.
Great. And then what advice do you give businesses, especially in Africa, that are looking to adopt cloud and AI technologies effectively? Because I know that many organizations, including clients that I handle, they feel very ill-equipped, especially where AI is concerned. They don't know where to start. Given what you know and what you're doing right now, what would you say to businesses, in particular in Africa, looking to adopt cloud and AI technologies effectively?
Yeah, so it depends on the type of customer. There are some customers that are fully in the cloud. They see the benefits. They see the risk and also see the benefits, and they've made a decision to go with the cloud. First of all, I would say, those type of companies can be used as an example, or to mentor other companies that are looking at the cloud. It also depends on the type of business that you're in. The cloud enables you to grow fast. It enables you to be more agile. It enables you to be more innovative. It doesn't restrict you. However, as a business, one needs to truly understand the cloud itself, the whole infrastructure that is involved, before looking at AI, because AI is just on top of it, right? So there are many technologies today that a lot of businesses are already using. I'm sure most businesses are using email, which are, they acquire as software as a service, for instance. So they're already leveraging the cloud, but for key workloads that they may be using for their businesses, a lot of them are skeptical. There's a control aspect. There's that a lot of them might be concerned about. But I think there's lots of benefits that outweigh the concerns. But for every company and organization, it's going to be very different. Not everything belongs to the cloud. So obviously, there will still be some workloads that will be local, in-house. There will be some workloads that need to be within the country. But if you do an assessment of your environment, categorize your workloads and your applications, there'll be ample opportunity for companies to take advantage of the economics of the cloud for some of these workloads. And like I said, obviously, there'll be some that will still need to be in-house.
All right. I'm really keen to hear some of the highlights of your work, building out the Azure data center infrastructure across the African continent. Any highlights that come to mind for you?
I mean, the one highlight that I see is I'm very happy as to just generally about adoption and embracing of cloud technologies across the continent, whether individually or from enterprises. It's going in the right direction. So adoption is increasing. The rate it's not at the same rates as, say, other continents, but it is going in the right direction. So I'm very pleased about that. Personally, yes, I am pleased and proud that we were the first major vendor on the continent with the Azure region that we built in South Africa 5 years ago now. So that's a very key action that we're able to deliver on the continent, and that has helped many businesses in the continent, not only from cloud adoption, but it actually instilled confidence in the whole sector as a whole. It has also helped other players as well. So our, like AWS, GCP, or even the local players, they're also increasing their capacity and going deeper into other countries across the continent. So it's been a good thing generally for the industry.
And maybe one of my last questions to you, what do you think would be the right way for African governments and private sectors to collaborate and accelerate cloud and AI adoption across the continent?
So from a cloud perspective, government has a role to play, and one of the roles is around, defining what the rules of the games are, right? So you can't play football without rules, especially professional football. So from a regulation standpoint, the government needs to be very active in that, collaborating with the industries. So be it the tech industry, be it the consumers that they're regulating or the industries that they're regulating, to come up with policies that not only provide security for the countries, but also that's beneficial to the citizens. So collaborating with vendors, looking at, best practices that are done globally, but we need to be able to localize that as to what fits us as a country that also will work for us as a continent. I think if we have that and that is advocated, then that will free up a lot of industries to be able to then go about looking at what's best for them. So that will be very helpful, especially from a cloud standpoint. Now, AI is something also very different that also requires its own set of expertise and regulations that need to be studied over a period of time with the right people before implementation. So I think some countries have already started to do that, coming up with AI policies. We need to see more of that across the continent in collaboration with the vendors, because I think that will be very helpful. And then once that is out there, I think the adoption will then be much easier for all of us on the continent.
Thank you so much. So, Dele, I'd like you to maybe give us your last remarks, any thoughts. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about your foundation, where people can find you and how they could partner with you. Maybe you can also talk a little bit about what you're doing in your day-to-day work, which also the audience would find useful, possibly to know, and also how they can become a part of the things that you're doing on the ground.
Yeah, thanks, Moses. So I mean, from what I do day to day, I have my day job that I do day to day. which is very, very hectic, which is around, looking at where regions that we go into, existing regions that we're in, what we need to do to continue to improve on the services we deliver, on expansion. I engage with many customers in the region. Like I said, I cover Middle East and Africa. I'm based in Dubai. So there's lots of engagement there and lots to keep me busy. At the same time, I have a passion about technology in Africa. I'm always engaging with folks in the ecosystem, be it startups, as mentors, people in the education space as mentors. A lot of companies that startups that I've worked with in the past during my ecosystem days are now big companies now, some of them unicorns. So I'm still involved in engagements with that. And I still have a very, very tight relationship with some of the people that I met there. So like last week in Naivasha, being able to connect with some of the folks within the ecosystem was great. As part of the foundation, I have a team that's helping me do the day-to-day. So we engage together. The website is Dele Akinsade Foundation.org. We will have lots of information as to the events that we're doing next week. So probably in a couple of weeks, there'll be more information on there. Right now, we're going to start raising funds because this has been self-funded for the past 4 years. But we have ambitions to go bigger, and we will start to raise funds very soon to kind of help us with some of the things that we plan to do. I love life. I love my family. I love my friends. And like I said, I've been with Microsoft for 23 years, done so many things, met so many people, been to a lot of places. And it's been a great journey so far.
Well, Dele, thank you so much for joining us on the Pure Digital Passion podcast. I'm so glad that we got to meet last week at the CR 100, very serendipitous, after 12 years. And I'm really delighted to hear what you've done all this time since we last met. But more importantly, I think the work you're doing at the foundation is really important, really relevant. I'd love to see that growing across the continent. And then also just looking at the exciting future of AI, cloud infrastructure across the continent. More importantly, the opportunity it creates for digital transformation for all of us. So thank you so much for giving us this time and this moment to hear your story, to hear what you're doing, and more importantly, to learn a lot about sort of how we can drive and inform many of the opportunities that exist around the digital transformation potential across the African continent.
Thank you, Moses. Things are going on the up and up. I'm very excited. Things are not where they were 10 years ago. It's night and day, and I expect to see that to continue to be good for us. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much and have a good day. To our audience, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to catching you in the next one on the Pure Digital Passion podcast with me, Moses Kemibaro.